welcome everybody who has joined. We have some very exciting conversations. When I say exciting, they're also important. Very important conversations on the issue of domestic violence. But how the warts, the nuances of that, the solutions to taking care of each other, creating those friendships, solidarities, coming up with solutions in terms of the legal side, looking at it from the mental health side. So we're going to cover, we'll try to cover all of that today by having these conversations with 5 panelists that we have today. I'm very excited that we have Malini from Miss Malini today, and she's going to start the discussions, and she would be sharing some issues, domestic violence cases that have come onto the group. But we will be talking about the group as well, which is Girl Tribe, Malini's Girl Tribe, and so what I would do right now, I'll do a quick introduction to the 5 panelists. I would also want to inform everybody that this session is being recorded. So it will become a video that you can watch later on. And you can request Breakthrough or team at Miss Malini to share the videos, but we will be sharing the videos much later. So yeah, let's start. There are certain rules which will be in the chat box, so please follow them. Everybody be on mute, and please switch off your videos. The videos, people on the videos will be Malini, Sohini, Nayana, Lakshmi, and Soni. Let me do a very quick round of introductions, and then we'll just delve into it. So Malini is, of course, everybody's heard of the brand Miss Malini. Today, her company, which actually started on her own couch with a laptop, has become a full-fledged media organization. She's the founder and creative of her company called Miss Malini Entertainment. She's also the founder of Malini's Girl Tribe, which is a community for women which has over 40,000 plus women that offer a safe space for support where women can network and engage with each other. And it's unlike any other platform in India. Besides that, she's also pioneered the concept of digital influencer in India, personal favorite. And she's a TV host, she's an entrepreneur and a best-selling author. So that's Malini, and welcome. So I'm going to unmute you. So there you are. Then I also have Sohini. Sohini Bhattacharya is Breakthrough's president and CEO. She has 30 years of experience in the social sector, where she's worked on resource mobilization. She's worked with grassroots organizations, and her primary focus, of course, working as the head of the Breakthrough family, is also looking at everything from the gendered lens, and working on the issues of violence against women is core to Sohini. She's also spent 10 years at Ashoka Innovators for the Public. It's an international organization that looks at social entrepreneurs, creation of social entrepreneurs. Of course, there's a lot about Sohini that we could learn about, but I'm going to stop here. And if you have more questions, you can ask later. Nayana Chowdhury, who's also here, she's from Breakthrough. She leads the programs at Breakthrough. She also comes with over 2 decades of experience in the development sector. She has a master's in social work from University of Delhi, and she's worked on issues of people from different marginalized communities in the grassroots of India. So, and she was at IKEA Foundation before joining Breakthrough. So welcome, Nayana. Soni Singh is a lawyer, and she specializes in corporate, commercial, and civil litigation. And she does take up a lot of cases related to matrimony and domestic violence, which is very relevant to the topic, and that's why we have her here. So yeah, welcome, Soni. And lastly, we also have Lakshmi. Lakshmi Ayyagari, she is a psychologist. She has volunteered with various NGOs and social entrepreneurs for upliftment of underprivileged girls from the point of mental health. She has studied psychology at university for women in Koti, Hyderabad, and right now she works at a private hospital in Hyderabad as a counseling psychologist. So she's going to talk about the link between violence and abuse, which is linked to mental illnesses and more. So we'll obviously delve into that. So welcome, Lakshmi. So that's our panelists for today. So I'm going to, of course, the context setting would be done by Malini. So I would request and welcome her to start the conversation. So Malini, all yours.
Thank you so much, Annika. First of all, thank you everyone who's joined this conversation. It's an extremely relevant one, and we're really, really excited to be partnering together to talk about this. I think one of the things that I'd like to tell you for those who are not part of the Girl Tribe, I see a lot of the Girl Tribe members here, so hi, is that we wanted to create a safe space for women to be able to connect and share things that maybe you can't necessarily always talk about, even with family and friends. And sometimes it's just really good to have, a virtual connection or a sisterhood, if you like, where you can talk about these things. And what we do there is we talk about everything from whether it's fashion and beauty to mental health to entrepreneurship, relationships, literally everything. And of late, what has really come into the spotlight is that we all know that domestic violence is a very serious issue that a lot of women unfortunately face, especially in India. And during the lockdown, we are finding that it has gone up exponentially, obviously, for the obvious reasons. Now, I know that it's a very difficult thing to tackle, to find a solution. There's no one quick fix for something like that. But we really wanted to have this conversation to see if there are things that we can do, tools that we can provide, and of course, address questions that have come in specifically from members of the Girl Tribe related to domestic violence. And a lot of it can even be not necessarily only physical violence. A lot of the times it's emotional. A lot of the times it's even recognizing the signs that you might be heading towards a relationship that could be, unhealthy for you. So, Annika, if you'd like, I can begin with some of the topics that have come in, and I would love any of the panelists to please jump in. I really appreciate, as the experts here, that you'll really be able to shed a lot of light for the women. So I'll just give you the context. There are 5 key areas that we have identified that have been coming up again and again when it comes to the Girl Tribe. One is this issue of being financially independent and requiring your husband or your in-law support, so you're not able to step away or walk away when you need to. The other one, of course, is during the lockdown, how to handle the proximity. You can't just leave the house and go somewhere else, which is a very serious concern. The third is getting help, whether it's mental help, whether it's physical help, legal aid. The fourth is even issues of self-defense, how to protect yourself. The fifth is children and domestic violence, because I've seen again and again, women are saying that when they have children, that actually causes a lot more friction for them, or they're not able to do anything because they're worried even for the safety of their children. And finally, recognizing the early signs. So I'm going to kick off with some real life cases that have come in. And of course, you can feel free to expand on the topic and other situations that you've come across. So here's one from the Girl Tribe where she says, my husband has forbidden me from working or having a job once I got married. And so he'll leave money for the basic essentials, but I don't have any other spending money or any income that can support me for any other activity, whether it's anything that I want to do with me or my children, whether it's going to a festival or anything else. And the claim here becomes, well, I will be, as the breadwinner, I will decide what are the things you're allowed to spend money on. So what can women do in this situation? Because a lot of women are discouraged or even forbidden from working very often after they get married.
I think Nayana or Sohini, would you want to, or I can ask Soni as well. Yeah, Sohini. Yeah, Sohini, you can go.
I was saying Nayana might want to take this one, but I just have one or two kind of overall comments to make, and then maybe Nayana can take the specifics of this. So one of the things that has happened with the lockdown, of course, is that we are living in a kind of a pressure cooker situation, right? Even if relationships were not abusive to begin with, you are already in a proximity, and every one of us are living through uncertainty. We have mental stress, we have uncertainty about the future. Somebody might be facing uncertainty about jobs. So there is a lot of, issues here. Even if relationships were not abusive to begin with, what happens is that under this kind of a situation, if you throw, kind of imperfect human beings into a lockdown condition at home together, what under a normal time, you can find a way to work around these problems and patterns. Often during this time, they tend to become unsurmountable. So the disruption of routines, the uncertainty about the future, the lack of time that you cannot spend apart from each other can all create a kind of a storm of conflicts, right? And right now, there is really no time for couples to get into a place of understanding with their personal challenges, or address, where the underlying fears that are creating conflict are, or resolve the issues by finding, a positive, peaceful way forward. In that kind of a situation, where families are spending endless day in close quarters, tension often increase, and the step of seeking help may feel really overwhelming. May feel, I might feel inhibited to seek help like that. So I think when things start building up, like this kind of a dynamic start to build up in your household, it's essential to act early, and it's essential to recognize that things are coming to a head. So that's the overall, kind of context I wanted to lay. Of course, if people are already living in abusive relationships, it gets completely unbearable at this point of time. I can't even imagine, living in close proximity with some relationship which is completely abusive to begin with. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out, and over to Nayana to, maybe take on the more specific question.
Yeah, thank you. Malini, I think you talked about the very real issue of women not being able to earn because their husbands or spouses have asked them not to earn. And I actually know a lot of women who are very highly qualified and have not been able to work outside home after their weddings or marriages. So what happens to these women when they get stuck into an abusive relationship? And what you described, Malini, is a perfect example of financial abuse. When somebody controls what you can buy, what you can see, what you can watch, or where you can go, what you can eat, we actually do not many times understand that as abuse. That you think that somebody actually tells you that, they think well of you, or they're saving money for future, and that's why they are doing this with you. But like the person who has reached out to Girl Tribe is completely explaining this so well and saying that this feels like abuse. And if it is feeling like abuse, it is abuse. And that's when you have to take a step. And I know Soni is there. She is going to, she will probably be able to throw light onto it. Financial abuse is an abuse which is recognized in Indian law. You cannot control. And if you are a woman who is in a relationship for a long time, and your husband says that you actually have not earned anything, yeah, but courts do not see it like that. Courts see it as a thing that because you have subsidized so many things at home, everything that your husband bought during the time of your marriage is yours too. You have every right over everything that is coming home, because it is because of you that money could be accumulated. So that's where
just to follow up on that, sorry, is that when it comes to a very specific situation like this, what is the ability of the wife to say, okay, well, give me a certain amount for leisure activities, because the court might say, yes, you're, entitled to a certain amount of money. But in a situation like this, how can that also be part of it, because leisure or self-care is also a critical part.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not saying that you have to start from the quote itself, but at home,
Sure.
I think these are some of the things that are not understood by people. I'll give you an example. A few days ago, I was talking to a friend, and I was a male friend, and I was telling him that he should share work at home. And he said that I will share work at home after 6, because 10 to 6 I'm working. And I asked him, what do you think your wife does between 10 to 6? Yeah. So the feeling is as if somebody is sitting at home and not working. Whereas this whole idea of being at home, we know all of us are working at this moment. We know how much work is there at home. And there are several. So I would say that a person like this, if there is any space to have a discussion with the husband, they should try to have a discussion with the husband saying that, in sometimes I want to have some bit of money in which I'm going to decide what do I want to do. Yeah, it might be a haircut, but I just do not want to give you an account of that. That's my freedom as a fully grown up adult. I want to have a fully fulfilling life. That's a point of discussion that one can start with.
And the earlier you have these kind of discussions, because when you get married, you think everything is lovely, it's all rose tinted, hunky dory, things are going to go great. But if these are the conversations that you can have as early as possible in your marriage, I think everybody understands that this is the need and this is the thing. Often we do not talk about these kind of things. We think marriage is, is going to go perfectly fine and all of these things will sort out. But what can you do? What can you don't? What are the resources like? How much can you share? What will you not share? How much time you need for yourself? All of these things, I think, have to be negotiated. And marriage is about negotiation. So you have to kind of, lay out the thing right at the beginning is what I feel personally.
And Malini, you know what? This is not only when the husband is earning and the woman is not earning. We have also seen that when the woman is earning, the money is completely controlled by the husband, on the pretext that you do not know how to handle money. You are not good with finances. Women do not know about finances. These are some of the lines that we get to hear. We have worked with factory workers who are earning well in garment factories, but their credit cards and debit cards are completely controlled by their husbands or sons. They do not even have access to them. So it's much beyond. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's very valid. I think you raised an extremely good point, Sohini, that if this is something that can be discussed in advance, that would actually really, I think that's something that had not occurred to me. There's excellent advice. So in terms of now, when we're talking about the lockdown, which is a very relevant situation for everyone, especially facing abuse, there's a situation here where she says, I'm a married woman and I stay with my husband and my in-laws and their extended family. And her own parents are actually living alone. And so during the lockdown, she actually wanted to go back and be with her parents, but her in-laws refused. And even though the in-laws actually have house help and her parents do not. And she felt that she was also not getting support from her husband on this. And I think aside from even the lockdown, this tends to be quite a common occurrence where women are not allowed to have a great relationship with their families. They're told to sort of cut off, or they're supposed to only give a priority with their new families. So what is the right way to tackle this? Because obviously they do have to maintain the peace in their new home as well.
Oftentimes what happens is that you said correctly that the husband is not supporting because the husband doesn't want to become a bad, son, right? The husband doesn't want to look up as a bad son. And he thinks that the relationship with wife is actually dispensable in terms of where he stands with his parents, right? So that is, so I think, a lot of these things happen because, again, right in the beginning, these are not concerns that you can have. Whereas if I had made it very clear that, I have parents who are alone, who are living alone, and if needed, I will have to give an X amount of my time to look after them and look after their, of their well-being, especially at a time like this, these are explicit conversations that are very, very needed. These are not things to be assumed automatically that, and also on part of me, if I assume that I have parents and I'll go and stay with them whenever I want to, without having, lay it out very clearly that this is where my priorities also lie. I have 2 or 3 or 4 priorities in life, and these are all priorities of equal importance. I think those are the kind of deals that you lay out right in the beginning. Yeah. And it's difficult to really carry it through. And I'm sure, and all will speak to this a little bit more. But I think even recognizing that these can become points of contention is something that you have to prepare yourself for when you get into a marriage. Yeah. Nayana, you want to?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that you're absolutely right, Sohini. Also, there are these TED Talks in which we say, then Deepa was talking to us the other day. She's a TED Talker, and she said that when we raise our girls, we actually raise them to be abused. Because you are constantly teaching your girls that house is your house.
Yeah.
Those people are your people. There is nothing wrong in accepting another family. You must accept them. It's such a gain to your life to have more people in your life. But why do you have to leave your own parents? You are equally responsible for them. And if you look at how the Indian legal system has looked at it, they have said that the parents are equal responsibility of a daughter.
Right.
They have not made this. This is more like norm. At Breakthrough, we try to address the norms that go around these. So like Sohini is saying that, this can be done in a very nice manner that, like I love my in-laws, I also love my parents. So I want to take care of them at this moment if they need me more. Whenever you need me more, I will be there for you.
Right.
So these kind of conversations can
There's
also.
an interesting offshoot to this, which has to do with, living with your in-laws. There's another girl, and we actually had quite an extended conversation on the Girl Tribe about this, where she said that she's newly married, and because obviously during the lockdown, they decided to move in. They live separately, but they moved in with his parents to take care of him, and she's completely fine with that. But during the time that she got her period, she was told not to enter the kitchen. And, they have some slightly, older traditional views on this. Now, the conversation here was that the rule was that she can't enter the kitchen. Somebody else will make her meals at that time. So part of the conversation was take it as a 3-day vacation. Since you don't live with them, you just have to adjust for this time. But another side of that conversation was you're propagating something that's a very archaic rule. And then do you want your children and other younger women to feel they have to follow that? Now, the fine line here is, especially in something like the lockdown, what is the liberty you can or should take to stand up for something that you don't think is right?
Should I take this? Because you know what, like Malini, you absolutely said it. I think that you have to, we always prioritize that, which is the conversation that we are going to take now, which is the conversation that can wait for later.
Right.
So especially something that is not going to bother me for a longer period of time, I would avoid it, and of course, if my daughter is getting affected, being there, like if I have a young daughter who has just had her periods and she has to see me being discriminated upon, and this is making an impression on her, I will stand up. Yeah. So there is no one rule. I think you have to take into consideration how much it is affecting the scenario and what you are going to gain by actually engaging or letting it be. So take a call on those things. Yeah, Sohini.
And I was saying, that was a very good example of having a young girl. And if you do have a girl, a daughter at home who's just had her periods, she could be the best person to actually tell her grandparents about the harmful practices around menstruation and how that harms young girls. She is the best person and if it comes from her, then you are empowering her to understand that menstruation is completely normal and you're completely all right to talk about it with anybody you want to. And coming from the granddaughter, the grandparents have a much more, larger acceptability of those issues. So, if you have a child at home, that's the best person to unleash with all of these kind of things on your grandparents.
I really hope we get to a point where the son, like if I had a son at home, he would be able to have that same conversation.
Absolutely.
We have had that actually, Malini. You'll be very happy to know that there are sons who pick up these conversations with their aunts, older aunts, and also grandparents. So there is hope.
That's great. I mean, I think that's so true. I'd actually gone and I was very lucky. I got to hear Michelle Obama speak, and she said something very fabulous. She said she was addressing a room full of 50 influencers from around the world who are, in their 30s. And she said, I'm very optimistic because I'm looking at a room full of tomorrow's leaders and mothers and sisters. And you are the ones who are going to raise this next generation of girls and boys. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's very key for all of us. And I tell my mother and my older sister and everyone that we have such a big role to play, because in India, it's not just like the men are setting the rules, right? The women are setting the tone, like you said, for their daughters and the expectations. So it's both sides, definitely. Just coming to some helplines and safety, and I know that you guys do a lot in this regard. At present, during the lockdown, are there any helplines or services or rescue operations that can be done in a dire case?
Yes, there are. And there are a number of helplines that are working. Though, the lockdown puts a spanner in the works of, the helplines being very proactive in reaching women who are in distress, or even getting them out or taking them to a shelter home. But there are helplines that you can call. If you cannot call, you can ask a friend or you can message a friend, because sometimes, because of living in close proximity, sometimes you might not be allowed to make a phone call, or sometimes you might not be able to have that conversation. So, good to have, I always say it's good to have a group of people around you who can do it for you.
Right.
It could be co-workers, it could be friends, it could be college friends, it could be old school friends. You have 4 or 5 people around you to help you out, and those numbers can be called actually. But again, don't expect too prompt services from them either, because it's a lockdown situation. We don't even know whether the service provider has adequate means of transport or has safety gear to kind of, put her life at risk and come, all the way to do that. Shelter homes, of course, are one of the last resorts that you would want to go to, because often, it's our shelter homes are not some of the best places that you can go to.
Right.
But under the law, and Soni will be able to speak to that, if you are in an abusive relationship, the police, and if you have called a helpline or if you have called the police can come and actually get the perpetrator out of the home, so that you and your child, if you have a child, can continue to live in the house that you are in. It's part of the domestic violence law. So if you are taking a resort of a police or a legal action, that is also possible.
Well, that's good to know that the legal action could involve having the perpetrator removed, which actually I think is very valuable. Coming to the concept, the topic of children, actually, I think there is an even more significant role when people have children. And this is something someone brought up, saying that I have a baby and he's 2 years old. And actually everything changed from the time that I had a child. And now my husband has become abusive, even though he wasn't earlier on. And so now I'm going through a lot of mental and physical abuse, and he's not really interactive with the child. And this seems like there's a lot of different things happening here in this relationship. So I know there's, she says that we have gone to couples counseling, but I'm impressed that he even took the step to do that, but I wonder how much impact that has. Is there something more significant when it comes to being in that relationship and having a child, or what is the best way to tackle that, especially because you don't want to expose your child to the situation?
I always feel that what they tell us when we fly, that take care, put the mask on you first and then, attend to your child. Right. I feel that the first thing you need to do is attend to yourself, in a situation like that. Yeah. And then, think about the child, because the child is still small, the child will grow up, there's a whole lifetime and could be very well attached to your child, your life too. But you have to think about yourself at this point of time. What is it that you want? Do you want to take this further? Do you want to stop it here? Do you want to kind of get out of this? And I know many cases, some of my friends also, who waited till the child is about 18 to, actually go through a divorce, though they have been living separately for many years. I have often wondered, why put yourself through that pain? If you have the financial ability to actually come out of a relationship like that, and you are waiting so that the child can grow up to be 18, I think you're doing a disservice both to yourself and to the child.
True.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and I think if you have a child, you have all the more reason to get out of an abusive relationship. You must not stay in an abusive relationship when you have a child, because you are setting the norm for your child. The first set of relationship, Lakshmi is here, but the first set of relationship, the parameter for a relationship for a child is the parents' relationship. That's the first thing they learn from. So if you are making abuse a normal thing, the child is going to learn that abuse is a normal relationship.
Right.
Then it becomes extremely difficult for a child to develop healthy relationships when they get into, they grow up in these kind of things. Like Sohini said that, why wait till the child is 18? He has seen a whole lifetime of bad relationship in the house playing out. At the same time, Malini, I would say that, I have seen some fantastic parents who did not play out their relationship when they separated with the child.
Right.
They did not use the child as a pawn. That comes with a lot of maturity. You talk to your child's father or a child's mother as the child's mother or the child's father. And even if your relationship between two adults are not working, the child should not have to bear that, and make the child as insulated as possible. Do not talk against the father in front of the child, or do not talk against the mother in front of the child. So for the child, it's always the set of parents.
Right.
So one can actually do a deep dive into oneself and come out of the trauma and build relationships afresh.
Right. Soni, I really liked your analogy of put your oxygen mask on first. I think that's very valuable advice. Another question that keeps coming up, and I think this is very crucial, is recognizing the signs that you are approaching a dangerous relationship. I think this is something that a lot of people don't realize, because they get into a relationship where first, okay, he doesn't like what I wear or who I talk to, then it's one slap, he said sorry. So have you seen a particular pattern that you can recognize for people, and especially also for friends? Because a lot of times, people try to recognize the signs. Is there a shift in personality, even with your girlfriend, to know that, okay, something has changed and something might be wrong? So I think those signs are very critical. Can you maybe help share some of those?
Yeah, and I'm sure Lakshmi would be able to help in that, as we go along. But one of the things I have always found is from the time when you start feeling that, things are not on an equal footing, things are not on my perspectives, my experiences, and my priorities, even I have started putting them behind. I have started deprioritizing them. I think it starts from there. When you massively start to deprioritize your own perspective and your own experience and your own position, while you are kind of elevating that somebody else's position, somebody else's experience, and somebody else's perspective. I think that's when you start to do it unconsciously, but you start feeling that this is something that I have started doing, and this is something which is not the right thing, and that's when you should be actually looking out for these things. And then the small little things start becoming really big. Small little things start playing out, so things which you actually were doing very happily till then, when you start deprioritizing yourself, then those things begin to irritate you. That's when you really actually look at a sign and say, I am feeling overwhelming. This is not working out. I have to really stop and figure out why is it not working out. And
Right.
and one of the things I always say that it's really, you cannot be an empty cup, if you cannot feel overwhelmed all the time. So you have to be actually a full cup to look after yourself and then identify what's happening with you.
I think we should also have Lakshmi now talk
Yes.
about from her point of view, and I'm
Yes.
interested in knowing from her and Sohini, Soni also their points of view on
Right.
us.
Yeah.
But Lakshmi, can you sort of shed some light?
Yes. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, in all the cases we discussed, one common thing is one common thing I observed is gaslighting. Like that's what we name it in a psychological term, where a person tends to cut off the financial freedom, emotional support, and every other aspect with or without intention, and then puts a woman in the place of a victim, where she gradually finds it helpless to be in the scenario and also hopeless, like she cannot choose for herself eventually. So I feel it is very important for women to understand this pattern of behaviors. Doesn't matter when two people start a relationship, maybe they negotiate, maybe they actually think this is how we will take things forward, but women may observe a pattern where the other person is flipping off, and that's when she has to get alert and be alert and try to understand what that person is actually up to. Many a times, like, our actions and our words do not match. So probably while vocal, he or she is telling ki, I'll take care of you and I'm all into you, I love you, and all gooey terms which are really important initial phase of a relationship. But when it takes over a time, that person's behavior tells something else. Like he may actually ask her to cut off her friends, cut off her social life, cut off her work meetings, everything. Like, slowly and gradually, everything he takes control over. And these signs are very important for women to understand and observe. So when she has these signs, and what I mean to say is any particular scenario doesn't exist over a night.
Right.
It's a pattern of behavior which is being shown since the relation beginning. And then when woman doesn't act when it's wrong, he tries to take over her completely. So I feel women need to take over this part and get aware of this part more. Because doesn't matter our education qualifications, doesn't matter our financial backgrounds, many women are prone to this because they do not understand the pattern of behavior. I see women who come to us on a regular basis who are highly qualified and who are so-called financially independent, but whereas they are actually not. They are emotionally dependent on them for these reasons, and they are stuck so deep that they, like, at some point they will be so reluctant to take a help from social workers, psychologists, or any legal help as well. This is where all the pattern of behavior shows.
Right. Yeah, that's very insightful. Thank you so much. So that was my set of questions, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who've joined us who have their own questions as well. But I just wanted to reiterate that we do have a group, Malini's Girl Tribe on Facebook, where we do have these conversations on a regular basis. And just like we're saying, very often you may not have someone to reach out to. I found that a lot of women are finding a lot of solace and comfort in that. And the only reason I'm saying that is because I see it happen every day. And if there's anything we can do to help the women who are looking for some respite, you can even, discuss these things anonymously, or just find that you are not alone, which I think is the most important feeling in a situation like this.
What I can is I can address each of Malini's questions and the situations, because what she through her questions she has brought across a number of problems that one faces in which are part of domestic abuse. So things like financial abuse in the first scenario, where you were taken off the independence of using the money. Other abuse where you are in the same shared household and you are forced to act or do things in a certain way, and your independence is taken away on account of, say, you were told that you have periods and you can't interact, or you are locked down into such a situation, and what is the way out? Or because of children being abused, or children becoming the cause, or once the child comes, there was a problem in another scenario. So all these scenarios, and fortunately there is law in place, and there are each of these situations are envisaged. So what I will break it up, legal remedies, into two parts. One is how you should report, or how you can report under the law, and which are the forums you can approach. So there's definitely police, the normal police helplines. If you can't think of any other number, just call 100. Tell them that you need the women's helpline number, they will tell you. And these days, all police helpline will redirect you to the women helpline number. So you can't think straight, get to that number. Otherwise, there are systems where, though in a lockdown situation, you can't really use it much, but then there's a system of a protection officer, which is designated in each district of a state. If you know one, please contact the person, and that person can actually take a complaint oneself and report it to the magistrate. So they can take a domestic incidents report. It is called a DIR, or a domestic incidents report. They can report it to the magistrate directly. Then there are NGOs like Breakthrough and others, and there would be various other service providers. So if they are registered under the Domestic Violence Act or some other acts, and they also sometimes are empowered to make a domestic incidents report and involve the officer, who takes it forward to the magistrate. So these are the mechanisms of reporting that are possible. In fact, in a recent judgment of the Jammu and Kashmir High Court, the Chief Justice was she was initially in the Delhi High Court, and she, Justice Geeta Mittal, and she had passed an order, and the people are not able to reach out or do not have access to phones, etc. She has also suggested the mechanism of perhaps going to a grocery shop and being able to report there, and that goes further, or going to local pharmacies and being able to do that. So while you are going to the groceries, and she has suggested these mechanisms. She has also suggested that government should widely publicize helpline numbers and counseling numbers, where one can approach and make discreet calls for counseling, etc. So these are the mechanisms for reporting. And then what are the remedies available under law? So in the first situation where you had a financial problem and you want money, not maybe for your maintenance, but your recreation. Yes. So the thing is that it is allowed. It is definitely a part of your well-being that you need certain amounts for recreation. And under the Domestic Violence Act and normal marriage laws and other laws, what law recognizes is equal status and equal rights of the spouse. So each of the spouse can have the same status financially as the other. And therefore, each, in fact, in the current circumstances, each person, once such an application is made, both are required to disclose all their financial resources. And then whoever earns more may be ending up maintaining the other. But in Domestic Violence Act, the protection is only for women. So, but yes, you are entitled to a certain amount of recreation if you can afford it and if you know your family can afford it.
Just move on to some questions for now. And then we'll
Yeah, if there are questions, we could.
I think that in the beginning, somebody had asked that that how to overcome suicidal tendency, also if it requires any medical help. So, Lakshmi, if you could take this. Sorry, this time. Yeah.
So suicidal tendencies can be seen on various life issues. It will not occur over an instance. If a domestic violence is happening since years, victim might be showing various forms of suicidal behavior. She or he may be telling people around that she want to die, and she may be addressing things like she doesn't find any hope to live. She may be telling that she don't want to live and she just do not want to wake up. Not all the time suicide comes with a knife or a rope. It actually comes in a various form of verbal expression, and people around need to be careful about that. When a person is on telling about how they are feeling, how helpless they are, how hopeless they are about the scenario or the situation, and how helpless they are feeling about entire life, that's a one major sign that they are showing the sign of depression. And suicide tendencies majorly occur during symptoms of depression and anxiety. So this is one aspect we always need to take care of. And most of us have to remember that it may not be impulsive. Like, it at times is impulsive and at times is actually planned. People do plan their suicides at times. They do Google search, they do run a Google search, they do read a books about it, and then commit a suicide. So we always have to keep an eye around the people when they are giving us signs. This is one way how we can prevent suicides.
And the idea about seeking medical help, what does that look like? Of course, you're a counselor, but
Yes.
yeah. So, like, when does one decide, and how does one get convinced themselves that I need to seek help? Yeah, if you could.
So, in these scenarios, we suggest victim and any caregiver to see a psychologist in a person, so that they can evaluate and understand a condition, understand the case better. If there is a requirement for a medical assistance, they can guide you to a psychiatrist where they can take help. And most of the cases, medicines are not a first go. First go will be a therapy. If people cannot be helped by counseling due to the intense level of emotional turmoil they are going through, we'll try to balance all the chemical imbalances and emotional imbalances via external sources, that is medicines. So our first go should always be counseling and therapy. And if a counselor or a psychotherapist feel the need of a medicine, he or she will refer a client to a psychiatrist.
Thank you. And we're glad, Soni, are you back?
Looks like she's back.
Soni's back, but can't. I'll stop the video, but can you hear us, Soni? Or we could move to the next question in that case, because there are two questions.
Is anyone who's joined here wanting to ask a question verbally or?
Yeah. You can also unmute yourself or raise your hand, which is in the menu, and you could just talk to anybody that you have a question for. So the question is from Shefali. I would like to ask regarding the litigations the survivor goes through. She gets affected mentally and physically, but at times everything gets affected. Nobody comes for her support, no family, no friends. It gets difficult for survivor to deal with such situations. With this, who should who should we go to?
Not very sure what the question is. I mean, uh, it does get, it does get oppressive at times, right? I mean, and this is related also to the question that is asked in the chat about the stigma that is associated with domestic violence, and then taking the next step of actually calling in authorities, taking a report, going to the police, and oftentimes what we see is that women do not end up going to the police or going to the court because they do not want to attract that kind of stigma to themselves. They do not want to be marked as a woman who is, a victim of, a survivor of domestic violence, and somebody who has taken her family and her husband to court. That is a huge kind of social stigma in our country. And for years, even in very, elite and very enlightened families, I have seen that, divorces are talked about in very hushed tones, well, this person went through a divorce and, this is what happened to them. Their voice naturally drops because, it's a mark against the family. So yes, it gets very oppressive, and sometimes you feel like you do not want to actually fight this litigation battle because of that stigma. And so I think it is very important, and I spoke about this before, is to have a kind of a support system around you of, friends, families, neighbors, whoever it is that can actually support you and tell you from time to time that you are doing the right thing. Yeah. Nayana, you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, I just agree with you that there is no way of not going through that pain. But you know how athletes train their bodies. There is a lot of pain involved. You are constantly going through, getting up every day, every morning, and going through the same training because you have a goal in mind. You want to live a life which is violence free, which is abuse free. It is not going to be very easy in a short term, but this is going to take you to a better tomorrow. So I want to give a virtual hug to anybody who's going through this, and I think build more tribe, build your tribe. I know women who have survived through this phase because other women have held them. Yeah, so just build your tribe. Have friends, talk to friends. You do not have to talk to your we just put too much emphasis on these friends, on the family and relatives. At times family and relatives are the last ones to understand what we are going through. Friends hold us up. In Breakthrough we say औरत ही औरत की दोस्त होती है. So that's the link, that's the tribe, Malini's girl tribe. Whichever tribe you want to be part of that, and build yourself. You're going towards a better tomorrow. Keep the faith. That's what I would say.
Thank you. And I wish we could get Soni's audio back. Soni, again, last time checking.
There. I'm there.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Please.
So I will add to that, and I think I can see some questions. Would you like me to answer the questions or continue with what I was saying?
You could do both, actually.
Okay, so the first I was addressing the situations that Malini addressed, and I had talked about the financial relief, that you are both entitled to equal status. And then let's talk about other probabilities. So you can definitely have a lot of protection in your shared household. So even if you're living in a shared household, you can actually get an order restricting the person or the perpetrator of abuse to a certain portion of the house and not communicating with you in any manner or threatening you. And under the Domestic Violence Act, if such an order is violated, one actually can, in a shared household also, you can get protection orders. You can get other protection orders such as stopping the person or the perpetrator of abuse from communicating or threatening in any manner, or visiting or communicating with the children, or harassing in any manner. So all these sort of protection orders can be availed. And then custody of children is another thing that definitely one can ask for. But the most important point here is, even if you are living together, you can have certain protection orders. So you can definitely, shelter homes may not be an option, as Sohini pointed out, but you can ask for an alternate house, alternate place to live, if that was an option, or and be maintained by the partner or the spouse during this time. And if that is not an option, and you have to be in the same household, then there can be orders prohibiting you from doing, or the perpetrator from doing certain acts.
Right. Thank you for that. There is one more question, which is about the courts being closed except for extremely urgent cases. How would one?
We are still approaching the courts, and the courts are open for video conferencing, with video conferencing facilities. And as noted, yes, extremely urgent matters. So if somebody is suffering abuse, and it is something that cannot be tolerated, definitely it's an urgent matter, and one can approach the court in such a circumstance if urgent restraint orders or such orders for maintenance, or getting immediate financial assistance, or immediate medical care, or some sort of care is necessary. And while we are addressing women's issues, one must understand there are protections for senior citizens as well. So senior women, and they can, if they are not in a spouse situation, but they are maintained by their children and they are not receiving a proper care, then also such remedies are available.
I think we'll also take notes of this, what you've just suggested, and we put them out.
Very important.
Important points for anybody to follow. So because all of this knowledge and information is currently missing, and that's why we needed somebody to give us this perspective. So thank you, Soni. There is one more question that talks about dealing with gaslighting and how to respond to such situations. While there is another question, and we'll get to that. It asks about the gaslighting, this phenomenon, and how does one deal with that?
Nayana, I want to take it.
I think Lakshmi can take this first, and
So, am I audible?
Yeah.
Good. So, one way is to be aware and understand always. So, as I already mentioned, many women among us who probably we meet on day-to-day basis doesn't understand that they are going through an abuse. They are being emotionally abused because they aren't aware. Probably they are brought up in such environment, or else they have been exposed to that environment for so long that they normalize the behavior. So to understand and be aware of gaslighting is one way to avoid it. And another way is, maybe in the initial days we miss the signs and hints the other person is giving us. But at some point we do acknowledge, and that's the time where we wake up and take a call. If probably after a year and a half relationship, or also, probably after 5 years of relationship, if someone realizes, this is what has been happening to me since so long, that's okay. If it has been wrong to you, you need not continue it. One need not continue it for the sake of they held it for a time being. They can actually stand up at any moment and tell, no, this is not the thing I want anymore. So identifying behaviors of gaslighting is one way where we can avoid and stay safe.
So, but that's the thing. The identification is the hardest, and that's why we need to also break the idea break it down to the idea of gaslighting and what it means, which you had already talked about earlier, that there are different ways how people control and make somebody feel guilty of feeling something. But yeah, that sort of looks at that. There's one more on there are two questions that I see have gone I missed. One is the bystander intervention, which looks at it says, how can I as a bystander intervene if I hear or see domestic violence in my surroundings, given that we're in a lockdown and there are limitations of mobility? How does one stop it when it is happening around them? So Nayana, Sohini, anybody?
I think
Soni?
call the police, or
Yeah.
you can always call the police, subject to what Sohini and Nayana can add. But you can definitely, even as a bystander, call the police, inform that this is what is happening in my neighborhood or wherever. I notice it, and you can you can announce it. In domestic violence cases, the problem that you face is sometimes the whole family will say that nothing was happening indeed.
Yeah.
But that's a situation that can happen. Like if you do think that it's something that you need to interfere with, you can definitely call the police and inform them.
Yeah, so can
Also-
I talk about our
Sorry,
ring the
go
bell?
ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I really want on bystander. One of the interventions that I really like is about how you can break the moment of violence. And there is a campaign called Ring the Bell or Bell Bajao campaign that comes. You can go to internet and learn about it, and you will see that there are several videos in which the first one starts with Baman Irani, and he goes and rings the bell when he hears some disturbance coming from inside the house, and he asks to make a phone call. So as a neighbor, people actually used various different things. They went and asked for a bowl of sugar. They they came and checked that, is electricity working in your house? I do not have electricity in my house. So what you do is that you break a moment of violence. When you break a moment of violence, the perpetrator gets some time to think about it. At times it just, when somebody is in a violent situation, it just escalates, and you can put a stop to that. And the other thing is that the person who's being subjected to this abuse can go into a room and lock herself and probably get a chance to call herself. So if you can think of nothing else, if you think calling a police is too much, you think that you do not want to give out your identity, you can just go there as a neighbor in a big apartment society and just ring the bell. So that's one thing that I wanted to talk about. Sohini?
I couldn't hear what you were saying in the last few sentences.
Okay.
So bystanders can call the police. Of course, that's one of the last maybe step that you would want to take, knowing that families might not want you to call the police. You could call a helpline. You could ring one of those helplines and say, look, my next door neighbor is being beaten up badly. And this has happened many times during the lockdown. We've received messages from some WhatsApp group somewhere. I received a message saying somebody in Surat is being beaten up very badly. I reached out to other people, and then somebody reached out to the Gujarat Mahila Mukti Manch. And, there's a lot of people kind of got involved and got those women extricated. So somewhere, somehow, just message and phone a helpline yourself, and as Nayana says, just interrupt the violence by anything, beat a thali, beat on the door, beat on the wall, just to let the perpetrator know that somebody else is listening, and that act itself is quite enough to put a stop in your tracks, that somebody is listening, somebody is aware that what is happening here is not normal. So those kind of things actually work, when we ran the Bell Bajao campaign in 2008 to 2013, Bell Bajao became a metaphor for taking action on violence against women. And people, like Nayana was saying, people thought of impossible things to do, like in a small village, a group of boys would kind of come over to their neighbor's house and watch television at 6 o'clock every day so that the man couldn't come home and beat his wife up. Think of that,
Yeah.
People ask for a bowl of sugar, chai patti, a phone call while the phone is in that man's pocket, So just think of an excuse, make up an excuse to ring the bell and just go away, or knock on the door and just go away, just to let the perpetrator know that you are there. And also the person who's going through that abuse knows that people are watching out for her or him, and that gives them an enormous amount of actually confidence that, an assurance that people are watching out for me, people are listening out for me.
And Anika,
Yeah.
Anika, I just wanted to also take the question of domestic violence when it is
Non-matrimonial violence.
Yeah, so once you do that,
Yeah.
then we'll also get Soni to comment on the last two questions together.
Yeah.
But yeah, Nayana, please.
Yeah, so like Soni is going to, I think, definitely talk about it, that when the PWDVA is talked about, Protection of Women on Domestic Violence Act, it is not about marital violence. It's about any violence that the woman faces in a home. So you can definitely take up the cases against, you can do a DIR. Soni explained the DIR, and you can talk about these when it is your brother or your father or anybody. Yeah. So it is not whether a prevalence is there. Actually, if you look at it, how many women, I was even reading one of the case that Malini sent to us in the Malini's tribe. Somebody is saying, I know that I have tolerated abuse for 18 years. I want to now go out and stay with my son. But do you really want me to take this to court? Do I really want to go through that pain of taking my husband through court and stuff? So there will always be less number of women who would actually raise the issues of violence. They would say, I am happy, I'm out of it. I don't even want to talk about it again. Yeah. So
sorry, Nayana, sorry, I've been just informed that I think Malini has to move to another call.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm really sorry to interrupt, but let's quickly hear from her before she signs out.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. This has been very helpful. I think everyone's got a lot of new perspective on this. I really appreciate it, and I'm very happy that we were able to do this together. For everyone who's watching, please do come join Malini's Girl Tribe. It's a group on Facebook. We also have an Instagram handle called Malini's Girl Tribe. We continue to have these conversations, and I assure you, you will find a very good sisterhood and people who will hear and understand you. And there are quite a few members who are watching today who can vouch for that. So please do come join. It's a absolutely free group for women. You just have to be a woman to join. That's basically the only prerequisite, really. So thank you so much.
Thank you for
so
having
much.
us.
Bye.
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 We can continue. Oh, sorry, Nayana, you were speaking and I had to intervene. But
no, don't worry. I think that point is over. Yeah. That you can put a case against any of the things. But if you are looking for numbers, you may not get numbers ever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the challenge. Soni, if you could add to, or maybe take it from the two questions, the bit about non-matrimonial domestic violence, and what is how do women approach courts in those cases, and also from how do trans women figure in this conversation about domestic violence, because that's a very big chunk of population we kind of ignore. So and of course there is given the trans bill, everything around the whole the issue, if you could shed light on that, in both of these questions.
So the first question, Nayana almost answered that completely, because domestic violence, the way it is defined, the aggrieved person is defined as the woman, but the perpetrator can be anyone, need not be only the spouse, but any person in a domestic relationship. So it need not be only the spouse. So it's not a matrimonial domestic. Any kind of domestic violence perpetrated towards women has been protected under the Act. Yes, I do get questions sometimes that men are not protected, and unfortunately, yes, trans women do not figure in the Act. So for the so going to the next question, in as so far as trans women go and people of the transgender go, I think what one will have to go back to is the for now the Indian Penal Code and whatever measures there are for violence against persons as a whole. So any person who suffers certain kind of physical abuse, obviously there are laws in place for that, and one would have.
Sorry, so again, the audio is going really, it's being very inconsistent.
Is it?
Yeah, it goes on and off. We can't hear you properly. I don't know what's happening. We've also switched off the video. So, any more questions? If not, then I think so.
I am really sorry about that.
No worries. And also, if we could also, sort of look at where do we go from here? Like we've talked about solutions, and a lot of people do want to understand from a mental health point of view. Now we have Lakshmi, who has also offered to share her contact details if people want to get in touch with. This is something we can share in the group itself if somebody is looking for, as a resource list. And something maybe Soni could also help us out with, because we have a lot of helplines as an organization. We're trying to look at what are different ways of helping our survivors if they're in the need at this point of time. So there is a bunch of resource that we have, and we would love it if, and Debarati is also here from Miss Malini's Girl Tribe. So how do we sort of take this forward? Because that's the whole idea of doing this discussion today. The first bit is, of course, understanding and looking at how do you break down certain concepts that are generally not talked about, but also coming up with certain solutions in terms of creating that community, which very beautifully has been created by Malini and the team, and and all the women who've joined the Girl Tribe on Facebook. So that's been it's actually pretty commendable, and I think we need to push for more such spaces. Given everybody's in the house, so online spaces do provide that escape, and also somebody who's going through any kind of issue, any kind of abuse. Also, that's something that we need to keep in mind. And thankfully now, if Soni can type in, and if we could also just go through what she's written. I think it's a good time now to wrap up in case there are no more questions. And Debarati, in case anything you wish to add before we sign out, it'll be nice.
I just wanted to thank everyone to come together and give us this session. It was quite a good session. We would, encourage women to talk about such issues and not keep things to themselves. Malini's Girl Tribe is a platform that does exactly that. We facilitate things like this. The whole intention of this group is to give women a voice to talk about various things. And now that we have partnered with you, moving forward, I'm hoping that when we would get such issues from women, we are able to help them in a more holistic way, and are able to give them solutions to what they're seeking. So yeah, that is the intention right now. Thank you everyone for coming together and for this chat.
Awesome. I hope this is good for everybody, and then as we go back with slightly wiser on certain things. And again, thank you to Lakshmi and Soni, who've been so wonderful to give us their time. And I know they're all very busy people, but wonderful of them to contribute here. And thank you, and Nayana, Sohini, you're awesome as always.